Yo, what's going on YouTube? In today's video, we'll be talking about some underexplored cards in the OP07 meta. I think this got overlooked because there was set formulas for things and everybody was so used to what they were playing that they didn't see to try and advance games until the next format. But in OP08, we've noticed some cards from OP07 that are starting to get a little bit more popular. But before we go into those, I'd actually like to talk about some cards that I've seen in the OP07 meta list that I'd actually like to talk about today. Some cards that are actually insanely good, and I don't know why they didn't get played anytime sooner. The cards in which we are going to be talking about, the cards that I'm mentioning today, are the 2-cost Tony Chopper from OP07 and the 3-cost Tony Chopper from EB01. Now, these cards did not completely get overlooked, or at least the 3-cost chopper did not completely get overlooked in the EB01, as has been seen in law list. It's pretty good. It does effectively what law wants to do. Reduces body by 2000, establishes a body, and creates a blocker. So this thing is either a actual blocker, a pseudo blocker, or a reducer. That's incredible, and also has 1K counter, so it can be used for that as well. But we all know about this chopper. We all know about this chopper's ability. We're going to move on to this Tony Chopper in purple, which is no ironic situation that you have a red chopper that reduces by 3000 and a purple chopper that ramps by 1. And we have a leader that's Rare Purple Law that really likes both of these ideas. Now, this chopper is actually pretty insane in law, and it's criminally underplayed in the deck, and I don't understand why. I thought that once I had seen the Foxy engine in general, I thought that was incredible, and I thought it was something that law really needed for the meta. I think that people again had created a list and they just felt like that list was the end all be all, so we never decided to explore or try and go further. But I do believe that there is a list that, in my opinion, is more superior than the original law list that was created, and does just a little bit more and has a little bit more versatility. But going back into this chopper is insane in law, and it's really good. I think that the reason that it got mostly overlooked is because of its stat line of being a 2-cost and 0 power. In today's meta, that's a really bad stat for a card to have, which makes you not want to play cards like these in your deck. But this chopper in any deck that doesn't have inherent removal it does work. It does exactly what you need to do at every point in which you need to do it. Now, again, this chopper is, I think that they should have made this in alt art. I think that they made this and didn't realize how good it was, because in law, its on playability is just to ramp you 1 if you have equal or less dom than your opponent, which may not seem like a lot, but in law, it is a lot for a 2-cost ramp 1. There isn't anything else in the game that exists like that. So this is the very first card that is a 2-cost ramp 1. And it establishes a body, and it creates a blocker. So that you may think to yourself, yeah, the 2-0 is what makes it easily get riddable. But this is also what makes it such a challenge, because now your opponent is forced with having to choose to get rid of this or having to choose to get rid of something else. And when you have a board set up, then choosing to get rid of this doesn't necessarily become a priority, and you'd be surprised how often people don't choose to pop this because it's not as important as the rest of the board. And it's always important too. I always like to say that you need to be popping known knowledge and going for known knowledge before you go for unknown knowledge, aka the hand. Chopper is known knowledge on the board, so your opponent can choose to deal with it and know how to deal with it because they can have possibly the resources to, but they can't have the resources to deal with something they don't know about, which is what's in your hand. So you always want to be getting rid of known knowledge before you get rid of unknown knowledge. And getting rid of unknown knowledge is basically attacking, and that's how you mitigate the potential cards that you might know what's in your opponent's hand. That's just a little side spiel that I just wanted to throw in there. But again, these 2 chopper cards in law are really good. Again, they both do what law wants to do with the ramping and with the power minusing, and also both being blockers, and this being a chunk blocker. It also comes in a lot of situations where your opponent was swinging something that you just swung with to backswing your board, and you just simply get rid of this chopper because that's all it's there for. It's just to eat and attack. And if it does survive the turn, you immediately use it. There's never a point in time where you're saving this chopper for some sort of later attack unless you got something planned. Generally speaking, you just want to go ahead and use him immediately, because another reason why you want to use him immediately is because there are going to be times in this list where you have a full board state and you want to get rid of him just so that you can start playing other creatures, which is again is really good. But that was my spiel over the 2 choppers, the Reducer and the Don Ramper. Again, really good in law, really super effective, currently underplayed. The only decks that these kind of sort of really suck against is black, but that's it. That's really the only deck. You can see these in any other matchup. Bonnie, Dofi, Perona, well, not Perona because they're just rested, but even still, seeing these put your opponent in a tough position if you have an established board. But like any meta deck you can realistically think of, these cards are really good to have in the deck against them, because if they can't just immediately answer them, then they're cracked. They're actually really good. But this is just to segue into the main portion of the video, which is what we're going to be talking about here today, is my version of Law, the Foxy list, our Foxy Law, as I've dubbed it, which does include Foxy, Pirates, Porsche. Porsche came out in OP07 and was never represented in OP07 in the West, and I never understood this. You have so many targets to summon. Well, you don't have like a lot. You actually do have a lot of targets, but in relationship to Law itself, you have a lot of targets that you don't have to go out of your way to play. Now, in the OP07 meta, of course, Zoro became extremely popular, and we started playing this left and right, but we didn't play it in tandem with Porsche. There's always going to be a situation where putting out a free body is always going to be good in any deck that you play, but especially in Law, it's extremely oppressive and helps swing games in your direction because you're playing 3 bodies a turn as opposed to 2 bodies a turn. Now, this does deplete your hand size quite a bit, yes, but with cards like Reiju, you can actually recover your hand size pretty easily, and with Queen, you can dig into your deck for the pieces that you want to see. But the Foxy version has a lot more potential and a lot more options for playing other cards and playing into other opportunities to make things happen, simply because you just have a little bit more versatility with this version of the deck as opposed as you did before. One of the cool things about this deck is not only is it extremely strong and extremely aggressive, but it also allows you to play a lot differently. The previous Law list, you could ramp and go wide, but in this you can go wide and have more options, if that makes any sense to you. As a Law player, that might make a little bit more sense to you than the non-Law players, but this list allows you to go, like I say, wider and have more options as opposed to the other list, which just allows you to go wide, and you're kind of limited on your options of which you can play. There's only a set amount of things which you can do. Hold on, go. I'll be with you in a second. Come on, go. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So sorry. Anyway, let's just go over a starting hand here, and let's just assume that this is our starting hand in Law, and we had already taken our turn our turn draw. We're at 3 life, or we're at 4 life, start of the game. We just drew for turn. We have 3 Don, and this is our hand at 3 Don. Now, it could be a combination of cards, but this is what I mean when I say that Law just has a lot more options. There are so many different things that you can do with this hand. It's ridiculous. You can go so many different options and routes with this. It's crazy. You just have options now on how you can play the deck. I'm not saying that you didn't have options before, but again, this just allows you a little bit more versatility, and I'm gonna show you what I mean. Now, it is your second turn. You have 3 Don, and you have the option of playing any of these cards. Which cards do you play? Because you have options. You have really good setup. You have really good follow-up. You have really good control. This hand is actually pretty cracked. Your options are again, sky is the effing limit here. Because there's just so much that you can do, so many options that you just do have. And you just do essentially whatever. Like, that's just really what it feels like. It feels like you just do whatever it is you feel like, whatever it is you want in this particular build. But going over one of the potential things you can do is you can go ahead and play the Tony Chopper and pass your turn, and then on your next turn, your draw. Let's just say that you draw a kid. On that turn, then you can go up by 2 more Don. You can play the kid into a Porsche combination and do all of that, and then just kind of sort of follow up from there. I actually want to swap out one of these cards for an actual target for Porsche, so that this example hits a little bit more home to you and is a little bit more better, because now your options are insane. Before that what I had in my hand, you just had some good options, but now you have versatility. And then let's just take it back turn, and just to say that the kid isn't here, these two Don isn't here. Let's just say that these two are off to the side in their own merry little wonderland, and we're back to it's our turn. We drew for turn, and these are the cards in our hand right now. So as I told you before, you can go into a chopper, and then next turn if you go into the kid, it's a very, very, very powerful play, especially with having the Porsche in your hand for turn one. Now the other option that you have, and this is where things get a little bit more spicy, ladies and gentlemen, is that you can go immediately into the Porsche. Now you might be thinking that's a horrible idea because I'm only going to be at 2 Dawn. It is not. Not only is this not a horrible idea because it establishes a monster on the board, but you're also going to be able to go into another creature. Now again, we have some options here. We're gonna tailor make this hand, but this can happen in a game. Now let's just say that you played the Porsche, you searched top 5, and you found another Porsche. Which is, again, something that could happen. You have two options right here for summoning creatures. You can summon the Tony Chopper, as we discussed before, which will ramp you 1 Don, which, again, you go ahead and now go into leader ability. Or you can summon the Bon Clay, which, again, ramps you a Don, and then you can still, once again, go into leader ability, or even attach 1, swing 6, and then go into leader ability. Or you could just leave that Don and use it for leader ability, and then make your next play. But again, insanely powerful turn 1 play is to go Porsche into a Bon Clay, using leader abilities to summon a Sachi and Penguin, and then having 2 rested Don for the end of your turn with 3 creatures on board, 3 creatures on board, 4 cards in your hand if you were able to hit off of the Porsche, and then still 4 cards in life. And it is the very start of the game, and you are in that much control as a law player. That is insane, and you cannot do this in regular law. The most you were able to do in regular law turn 1 was that you would have to play a 3-cost character, because you wouldn't be able to play your Eins. You pretty much have to play a Zorro. There isn't actually a beneficial character to play aside from the Chopper, and then you manage 3 Dawn to have that same exact board, but it looked like this instead. Like, that would be what your board would be instead if you didn't have the Porsche. Some 3 costs if you had that turn, and this if you wanted to play that. But generally speaking, you wouldn't do that going first. You would more likely wait a turn or 2 before doing that, because you wouldn't want to be that far down in Dawn. But in this deck with this playstyle, you actually have the freedom to be able to do that. Now again, let's say that you didn't decide to go into the Sachi and Penguin, but instead you decided to go into the Reiju, and you want to draw 2 more cards, one being the Kid and one being the Sachi and Penguin. Now you might be thinking like, well, why would you do that? You only have 2 Dawn for your upcoming turn. You fucked yourself. You know what I mean? Not necessarily, because again, we have this 2-cost Chopper, and that's why this is such an incredible card to play, and why I think it should go into more decks. Now we have, at this point in time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in hand. We probably took a life from that as well. And this is again just assuming that we had went into the Reiju instead of going into anything else, and we didn't ramp. We didn't do any of that jazz. We draw for turn. I don't know why all my Sachi and Penguins at the top of my deck. I actually do. I have everything in order right now, but that's neither here nor there. Again, you have the 2-top Chopper. You play the 2-drop Chopper. You were at 2 Dawn. Chopper got played. Chopper's on play. Ramps you 1 more Dawn. You now have 3 Dawn. You can stop here and just go to next turn and be able to play your Kid. Or you can even use leader ability to minus to just go ahead and establish your body if you wanted to go ahead and ramp back up 2 more Dawn, which would be the ideal play, to ramp back up to 2 more Dawn so that you can go into some other plays later on to the game. But this is what your turn, this is what your board would have looked like by your 5 Dawn turn. And again, that's crazy in law. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards in your hand, potentially being counters, and you got 2 Dawn on board, ability to use leader ability, all these swingers that your opponent is going to more than likely want to go into instead of going into your life, because giving you more cards in your hand and more resources and more options isn't what your opponent want to do, especially when they're staring at a board like this. Now again, we're gonna go even further back into the turns and whatnot. We're actually gonna take 2 of these Sachi Penguins back and say we're gonna put those back into the deck, whatever, what have you. And let's just say that on that turn, we decided instead to go into the Sachi and Penguin and ramp 2 Don. Then that's fine too, because on our next turn we'll be at 4. We'll be able to play another Porsche into this, or even a chopper into this, or whatever the case may be. But let's just even say that we go back even further than that. Let's just say that our turn 1, instead of playing that huge combo, instead of searching this piece, you know what I mean? Let's just say that instead we had went into the Tony chopper and we passed. Our opponent swings into us. We take the life and we say, now, okay, it is our turn. What we do, again, we have options. We have things we can do. Mostly for what I would like to do, I usually, what I will do is I will play the largest body that I can, because it's the most opportune time to establish that body. And also playing the kid means that you're going to get more ramp for this turn. So let's just say that your opponent did not destroy your Tony chopper. It's still on the board. It's your turn. You got 5 Don. What do you do next? Again, with this hand, you got options. So the first thing I would probably do was go ahead and play the useless Captain Kid first. Go ahead and get him out the field so I can get his leader ability. Then, of course, I will go ahead and use leader ability to summon the Porsche. And then I will go ahead and use Porsche's ability to go ahead and search another Porsche, or the additional Porsche that we had from before. Let's just say that we had searched it. It was like the second or third or whatever the card case may be in our deck. We searched the Porsche. We now have these cards as our starting hand. I'm sorry, not as our starting hand, but as the cards in our hand for that turn. We then go ahead and resolve our Porsche's ability, and we summon a Bon Clay. And then after Porsche's ability has resolved, we can start resolving the other 2 card effects, which are going to be our Kid and our Bon Clay. Our Kid and our Bon Clay. Now, after this whole entire combo is done, let's just go over the math with you real quick. So we started off with 5. We use Leader's ability. We use Porsche's ability. So now we only have 1 Don left. All right. Now, we used Bon Clay's ability, and we went ahead and we ramped 1 active. We used Kid's ability, and what do? We ramped 1 active. We now have 3 Don, and we'll be able to go back into a 5 Don play next turn. So we still have our 5 Don. We can still play another Kid if we want to. We have 2 blockers, a reducer, 2 swingers, a high swinger, impact swinger that your opponent's more than likely going to want to tackle when they tackle this, because they don't want that larger body to swing at them. And again, we have a myriad of cards in our hand, plus cards in life. But guess what? The comboing doesn't stop there. We're not done. You still can do more in this turn. You don't just have to end and that be it, and we just move on to the next one. We have options. Again, you can attach these 2 Don to this Tony chopper and reduce something, but you already use leader ability, so I don't recommend doing that at all. You can attach 2 Don to your leader so that you can swing 7, which in essence almost guarantees you a lot of cards, almost guarantees you the 2 cards or the 1 life. You generally speaking want the 1 life, because again, the more cards they have in hand, if they're underprepared for your 4-cost blocker law, that just makes this entire setup that much more painful, because your opponent held resources in their hand to try and keep themselves from dying. They get punished with a 4-cost law, which is another reason why this combo is so good, because it de-incentivizes your opponent from playing cards on the board and keeping the cards in their hand. But at the same time, if they do play cards on the board, their cards are susceptible to the creatures that are on board, aka this chopper and this Bon Clay, which both get benefit from you having creatures on the board. But again, if you didn't want to do any of those things and none of that fit your fancy, you still have 1 more play that you can do, and this one is the zinger, folks. You can go ahead and, again, this insane 2-drop ramper, you have 2 Don. You go ahead and rest the last 2 Don that you have, the 2 Don that you got from the Useless Kid and the Bon Clay, and you play the Tony chopper. Tony chopper's on play ability is going to activate, and you're going to ramp 1. So now you have 4 cards in your hand recovery, 2K counter, 2 effective blockers that affect your 2 blockers, 1 that affects your opponent's board state, a swinger that is based off your opponent's board state, which de-incentivizes your opponent towards playing higher cost creatures or higher swinging creatures, because they don't want to get hit at this. And especially when they see that you have 3 blockers on board, getting to that Bon Clay with an attack is more than likely not going to happen, because we'll rather sacrifice these before we sacrifice the Bon Clay. Or if we don't sacrifice the Bon Clay and let them stay, or any the other creatures that we have on board, because we had board control at this point, pretty much whatever your opponent may play, you're going to be able to answer it. Again, if they're not playing black, then this can be a very, very oppressive board. Even if they are playing black, let's just say that the most they can do in a single turn is swing over something and pop 2 cards. Even if black did do that, let's just say they get rid of your kid and your Bon Clay. This is a board state that you're looking at, and realistically, you don't have to lose a life that turn, because you can just use this to block. Because again, it's small, it's going to probably get popped anyway. You can leave it on board to try and bait it as something you want your opponent to target, as opposed to targeting any of your other cards. But generally speaking, you're just going to get this up. You're just going to give it up because you don't want to lose that life. You don't want to go down. There's no necessary need for you to do so. And also, if you're not playing black and you still have a board state, you're going to want to remove him anyway, just because, again, if you still had all these creatures on board, you'll want space to try and play another creature. And if you're going to already get rid of the chopper, you might as well use it for its full value, as opposed to coming to your turn, realizing you have a full board and you want to get up something, but you didn't necessarily have to give up something, but now you do. So instead of using this as a blocker, you don't want to lose a counter in hand and lose the advantage that this nets you. But again, that's just some of the insane combos that you have in the deck. Again, as I said before, you got a little bit of hand recovering in the deck, counter in the deck. It's just a different style of playing. Definitely requires a little bit more big brain. You definitely have to consider your moves before making them, because in this version of the deck, one wrong step and you're done. And I don't want you to hear what I just said and take it lightly. I really want you to hear me when I say one wrong step in this deck and you are done. There's almost no coming back. You've minused yourself too much without giving yourself the option of being able to play more cards. The chopper is supposed to help mitigate that problem that you potentially can come up with in case that does happen, which is again another reason why chopper is so good. But he can't save you all the time, and it won't always come up that you have the chopper. So you really want to be very, very mindful about how you do this and how you play this version of the deck, because you're doing so much more Dawn minusing instead of Dawn ramping. You have to be very smart about how you ramp. Like the play I just showed you, it took me a while to discover that I could do that in the deck. I would have these card combinations in my hand, and then one day I was just like, oh shit, that all works. That's all a thing that can happen. My list is up on my Patreon. If anybody is interested, you can go ahead and see it there. I will not be posting the list on Facebook, probably not until after the first regionals, but this information is already out, so I'm pretty sure if anybody now wants to build the deck, they'll have the ability to. But I just like to keep my variant of the deck a secret until I can play in some more bigger tournaments, try and get a little bit more out there for myself. I've been scrubbing out a lot lately because I haven't been playing as much, but as I've been getting back into the game, I've been getting back into my old swing of things, and it's really been very, very, very fun to play. Law is in fact busted. I enjoy playing my busted Law list. I'm not going to say that it's not an extremely overpowered leader, because it is, but generally speaking, all the meta leaders are overly powered if we want to be realistic about it. In OP07, we like to think that Law is just too much, but I really think that just people are just over looking at him right now because he's the top dog. But that just happens when you're number one. Everybody wants to take shots at you. And in OP08, clearly he's number one, so everybody of course wants to take shots at him. But in OP07, he's a pretty balanced leader. He doesn't have too much over the other meta leaders, which is why it's such a diverse format, which is why I love this format so much, because of its diversity. And it's not a guaranteed win for Law. A lot of people would like to think that this is just, you're just going to auto win, but again, if you don't see your pieces and you don't sequence everything right, then Law can very easily be shat on. It's not hard to do. I've lost to UDA players, I've lost to VV players, I've lost to all kinds of players simply because they've had their cards, or I didn't use my resources properly. Just a bunch of things that can go in your direction. Again, I'm not saying that the deck isn't overpowered. Again, Black Maria does help it go into the what the F range, but you know what I mean? That's all that it did for the deck, which is really pushing it into overly powerful. But even still, they're starting to learn how to play against it over there. It just has high representation. But you know, it still can get washed. I've seen OP08 Law lists get dog walked. It can't happen. I think we're just crying out for something to happen. The biggest problem that I think with the bans right now in One Piece is that there's no way to balance the game and ban cards. Like, The only thing I think that will effectively help the game state and keep it as healthy as it is right now in this meta is to balance a surplus of cards, or ban a surplus of cards. There's a lot of cards you would hit from a lot of different colors to make sure that every color is balanced. Because you could hit Law right now, but Law might be gatekeeping something that's way worse than Law. Like, there are a lot of decks that are really overpowered that don't get looked because of the gatekeeping decks that keep them from being played. But once those gatekeeping decks are gone, even if one of the trifecta is gone, you now have a new villain. It's just how things work. So trying to call for bans, I don't agree with. Trying to call for let's get rid of this, I don't agree with. I think that we should errata some cards or limit some cards, but outright banning the leader I think is a little bit extreme. I think that the way that the game is panning out, I don't think we should continue banning leaders. I don't even think the Sakazuki should be banned because of how the game is going to shift later on, because of how things are going to change later on. I think that even Lucci has a pretty good chance. If you were to get an old Sakazuki list and you were to play against Lucci, I'm pretty sure it'd be a pretty even matchup for the two games. I think that the only thing that the Sakazuki player would have over the Lucci player would be the Sabos and the ability to bottom deck, but that's about it. Just having the ability to bottom deck is probably the only thing that makes Sakazuki better than Lucci, but in essence they're the same deck. Just one just does it with bottom deck, and the other one just does it purely with destruction. But that's the take, guys. Thank you for watching thus far. If you have gone this far, I know we ain't been posting on the channel a whole bunch, but you know, we've been trying to go through some things, trying to get some things in the works for ourselves here, just changing life up a bit for us. But we do thank you for the video. Again, go to the Patreon if you would like to see the deck list. I will be dropping more in better guides on how to use this list, because at first I was struggling using this list because I was just so excited to play Foxy, and I realized all the combos you could do, and so I wanted to play more so tailored to Foxy as opposed to the rest of the deck, and that caused some problems with construction and deck building. So I had to kind of sort of fall back on what I was doing. I seen the skeleton build on Atrocious's website, and you can go from there, but I think that you'll still wind up finding all the problems that I found when I first initially created the list, and you'll just have to go through the motions to try and figure out how it works. It's a little bit more complicated than standard Law, and again, it does require a bit more big brain thinking to use, but a more skilled player will get more value out of this list than a non-skilled player. I think a non-skilled player can pick this up, use it, and still get wins. I think it'll be difficult if they do things out of order and out of sequencing. But if you get a good player playing this deck, I think it becomes really, really hard to defeat that person, because they just have options and ways to get around almost everything that possibly can come their way. And how I play my list to try and have the ability to counter everything that I can potentially go against and mitigate whatever it is I can mitigate. But again, that's the video, that's the list. Appreciate you guys for watching thus far. Hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace.